Hey everyone, welcome to another engineering knowledge share session. Today we have Nicholas walking us through how all the pains in migrating legacy epics to work items. And so take it away, Nicholas.
Sure. Thanks for making these sessions. And yeah, I will get started with how we migrated, or we are migrating currently, epics to work items, and prepared some slides here. Okay. So first of all, um, what are the work items? Like work items, when we define, we tell you about work items, we actually mean it's like a framework that will help plan in the future to ship faster and better for things for our users. And you can think of this framework as um, like a completely revamped experience for the front end and the back end. So you build a completely new front end architecture, which basically is a single page application with a GraphQL backend. And you actually might have used work items already. Tasks were the first work item that we introduced. And even today, you can change any issue link to the work item link. And then you immediately see um, a slight difference in the UI. It looks a bit different, but actually data is completely the same. But it is completely new on the front end and lots of things happening on the back end as well. Like we have real-time updates and all of these things. So work items also have something like called widgets, but you can think of it like as features of a work item type. Like there's a weight widget, a health status widget, a date widget. And we can combine this then. We can say, hey, issues, like the type, work item type issues has a weight widget. It has a health status widget. Tasks doesn't have a health status widget. So you see, like we built these types of work items with the features, and we make it possible for customers and even in the future to create their own work item type. Some customers might not call it epic, but they call it like feature. And so they have a new named work item type feature with a few features like widgets in that. So this helps us a lot to move forward and plan. And so right now, for these work items, most of what we did is we reused everything we have in issues already. The issues table, notes table. Then we created a few more tables like work item parent links, work item date sources to store dates. And this is where it brings us today to epics and like why we are here. Because on the epic sides, we still live with a different table. Epics got built completely separated. There's some code that gets shared, but the epics table is a different table. It uses different tables for the hierarchy. And we only can reuse some of the code. Okay, so the goal is actually we want epics to be a work item because then we unleash all the power of the system. We can immediately add assignees to epics for free. We can immediately add health status to epics for free. Like this is such a game changer. But the problem is all of this must happen seamlessly for the user. Like there needs to be a feature parity. There must be no downtime, and all the existing APIs, the REST APIs, they need to work. So we have this plan, and this is the plan. And this is basically this is what my year looked like. And a lot of other people in this call, like Cassius and Eugenius and Alexander, who is currently not here, and Felipe, like all of this. This was the year of plan. This was our most focused thing we were working on. So we created this really great plan, and we have multiple work streams, and it worked well that every engineer took over a work stream as a DII. So the first one was obvious. We need a feature parity on the work item side. So features that didn't exist on the work item framework needs to be built when they are available on epics. That was clear. But now comes the fun part. We need to sync all the data from epics to work items. And then we need to hold the whole migration. And then we need to read from the work item, but we didn't do that in the end. And then we remove all the legacy code. So I want to today give you a step-by-step scenario how we are doing this and what we did the last few months to make this work. So yeah, sorry if this is a lot of text, but let's start with the syncing of the data. First, we identified all the data that is similar on the epic and the work item side and what we need to sync. So every time we now create a legacy epic, we also create a new record in the issues table. And what we immediately got into is like edge cases. So suddenly every epic has an issue record, and you see a spike in the data warehouse, like that we have like double the amount of issues with like epics that you had before, or you have problems with old imports that's happening from old GitLab versions that have a different structure. And yeah, these are the edge cases we immediately ran into. And then we started to syncing the basic attributes. Like every time we updated something on the legacy side, we called the service on the work item side. This led to long-running transactions. So this led to timeouts and some side effects that we didn't want to. Like suddenly you get a notification twice. And then there's this updated ad behavior, for example, that was tricky to track down. And then there are dirty reads and dirty writes, and because you have some race condition. And all of this is something we solved on a model layer then, because with the services, it was too much of a hassle. And then we synced all the associations. I will go to the next slide then, so you see it better. So we have this epics table, we have this issue table, and now every epic gets, when it got created, a new issue record. And for some features on the epic side, we, for example, to store this hierarchy, like you have an issue in an epic, we use this epics issues table. And then on the work item side, we have this work item parent links table. So we had to sync this from one side to the other. And we did this through the services, and this worked actually quite well. But how do we know if it actually worked? Like how we know if you're actually in sync or anything happening and if we get out of sync. So what we did is every time an update happens on the legacy epic side, we spawn a background job and compare the data, and then log anything that is mismatched, any attribute, but not actually data itself. And this led us to this dashboard that I spent too much time on for the last half year. This is the dashboard where we see exactly every time an epic gets updated or created, if it was in sync or not. And then we also track down which of the dates got out of sync. Which of the data got out of sync, which of the attributes. And it was quite, unfortunately, I don't have a screenshot, but this was quite beautiful when like 2-3 months ago, when we started like to migrate everything, this dropped like from a few thousand events that we get per day where something went out of sync to suddenly it's like a few dozens of events that got out of sync. And because I'm talking already for a long time, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me, by the way. Good. So we have a sync validation every time something changes on the epic side to the work item side. And so this was really a battle. Like we changed code and hoped that it gets in sync. Then we found a mismatch that we updated and fixed again. We found another one that took a few days, and at some point it was good enough. And so you see like this the dashboard that we have, and then you suddenly come into this position where you know like sometimes these are false positives. Like you get an error, but like actually it's not an error. It's like this background job, it spawns later, and then the data is not there. And like okay, and the problem is with false positives, you easily lose trust in your system. So we started ignoring stuff. Like there was the list of epic issues that you have as part of an epic. We thought like, this is just coming from imports, it's all fine, but we actually missed a bug there. And we only later found out about it. So this was super hard to track down. And another problem was we only have logs for 7 days. So what we usually did is there was a mismatch. We looked up the correlation ID and then checked what actually got executed on the user side that led to this mismatch. It was really great. but sometimes it's hard to find stuff. There are race conditions, and sometimes you have 5,000 events that worked fine, and there's like one event that got out of sync. You have no idea why. So what we also did is recently we added a very simple PL SQL script that goes through the whole database on the replica and makes sure if the data is in sync. So this helps us to get an overall view of everything working. And we also, for self-managed, because we have no insights there, we added service ping metrics to make sure that the counts are the same. Any questions so far? Okay, done. Oh, Shaka, you have a question?
No, I was just saying this looks great so far and sounds really complicated. I mean,
Yeah. So for every new epic now, like we actually create a new work item record, we sync the data, we are fine, right? All good. So next step we need to do is like we need to migrate all the existing data. This was the third step. This was the database migration. So now that every epic has a work item, let's get to the existing data. And there's like thing we have multiple migrations for the data. Like we have the child hierarchy, for example, we have the related links, like multiple associations needed to be ported to the work item side. But there were two constraints to actually start with that. Just like the first constraint is for every epic, we need to have a work item. Otherwise, we couldn't do the associations, right? You don't have the IDs. And that meant like the syncing must be perfect because we can only like migrate when the syncing is perfect. That's what we thought. So this was the idea. Actually, we did the whole syncing twice. If you think about it, we synced. I'm trying to find like a better way. So if you think about it, we synced everything from epics to issues, and we only were able to sync this stuff here once we have an issue ID, right? And we can, so like epic issues, the correlating work item side is like work item parent links. So we needed to have issues first. And to make this syncing work, we thought like, the syncing needs to be perfect, like our general data syncing. And at some point we thought, if we don't make the sync here, we always lose a milestone, right? So we need 2 milestones at least to sync all the data to the migrations. So we first need to do this one in one milestone, and then the other associations in the second milestone, because we need to rely on it. So every time the mismatch was found, we thought like, damn it, we need to wait another milestone. Then we came up with the idea that we just do not care about syncing for now. We just want this ID. The rest is fine. So that's what we did. So we did a first migration where we just synced all epics to all issues. Oops. And next step, we got syncing right. And then we did another migration, which resynced all the epic data to the issues table. That way we got some room, like bought us some time to sync the data correctly on every update. So this was a thing that brought us some time back. And then there's also the thing we did not migrate everything. There are some tables that are completely different, but there is a table, for example, there are a few of them that we shared already. Notes is one of them. Like Notes is a huge table. I think it has above 1 terabyte or so. Like it's a huge table on GitLab.com, right? And to duplicate every node on the work item side and the legacy epic side, it would be way too much. And it's hard to track down a single source of truth and so on. So we did not migrate that table, but we still can read from both sides, and I will tell you more about later. Okay, any question about the migration so far?
so did you still have to do it over multiple miles? You still had to, right? Because you still need to do the child table, so you still had to do it over multiple miles.
Exactly. So to give you an idea, we had to, for example, let's assume 17.0. We created the migration to create a issue record for all epics. Okay. And then we need to wait until 17.1 to set a not null constraint, for example, that we assume that every legacy epic has an issue. And only after that migration, we can assume that every epic has an issue and we can build the other association. So yeah, we had to wait the milestone. But there was this thing actually in 16.9, we found in the last minute a few mismatches. And this would have prevented us to run the initial migration because we thought we need to be perfect afterwards. So we gave up on the idea to be perfect. And we're able to, in 17.0, create a new work item for every legacy epic. And in 17.1, we did all the other migrations. And in 17.2, we did a resync again of the basic data that we missed to sync initially. So we were fine with the idea that work items is not perfect.
Why did you miss, like the first time, why did you miss some? Like, I didn't understand what are the causes of the misses?
Because the syncing is like, this is a 5 or 6 year old code base now of legacy epics. You always miss something. Even today, we have some data that is not perfectly in sync that we just accept. And this is like, it was not possible to catch everything. There's something then triggering in a model layer, some update that you were not aware of before, and suddenly you have a mismatch.
Okay. And so of course in .com you can kind of handhold this and you know what's missed and stuff. But what about like self-managed and things like that?
This is still a bit of a problem for self-managed. So our idea is the following. We actually GitLab.com has the most traffic of all GitLab instances. So we think that we see all the edge cases there. And we followed the migration and the syncing, and we don't see any mismatches now like that are substantial for us. And so we can assume the syncing works. That's the idea. And to check if the self-managed instances actually work, we added this service ping metrics. Like we, for example, now count how many epic issues are on the table for legacy work items, legacy epics, and how many counts do we have for work item parent links for these scenarios. Then I hope next month or like next 2 weeks, we get some data back, and then we see if this actually matches and the migrations worked. There would be the option that it doesn't work actually. And if someone has better ideas, please let me know. In the best case, we would run this this check here if everything is in sync, and if it is not in sync, we resync everything in a migration. But this would require downtime. So since we can't have downtime, we can't do this, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yep. So now we have the database migration. So everything is in sync, right? From epic to the work item. The next step would have been to read from the work item. This would be now the single source of truth. And sorry, this is the migration. So next step would have been to read from the work item. And then I looked into the code and all the places where we read from the legacy epic. And I think it was like 70 places where we directly read from the epic model. And I was like, oh, I think we can't easily change that. So we tried to figure out like, hey, can we inherit from the epic model, like replace it on runtime to read from the work item, or rewrite everything in the epic model to read from the work item? And this has been like a lot of effort. So this brought us to another idea, which we call hybrid syncing. So we actually changed the plan in the middle. So this was like March or April, because the initial idea was like we sync everything to the work item, switch over to the work item, read from it, world is fine. But the problem is the following. There's absolutely no way to go back anymore. Like when we mess up something, we can't just go back to the old view because the data is lost. And then the second thing is find all the places where we read from the legacy epic. There's a ton of these. And so this brought us to the hybrid sync, which is, it's called hybrid sync because it's a combination of bidirectional syncing and reading from both data. I will explain a bit. So Do I have this? So yeah, and there's one more thing. We already knew that we are good at syncing from legacy to work item side. So we knew it takes us like pretty much a month to build the syncing from one side to the other one. Why don't we do this another time? Because we know it just takes us a month. It's actually even easier from the work item side because the date, like the service is a bit, the code is a bit newer. Yeah. So this is the whole plan that we did. We now sync from the epic to the work item when something changes. And when something changes on the work item, we sync back to the epic. And this is the following advantage that on the public REST API or GraphQL API or any internal API, you can just read from the epic and the data will be the same in the best case. And at some point, for example, our internal APIs, when you go to the epics controller, we will remove that code anyway because we no longer need the epics controller. So this would have been code that we would have needed to rewrite that would not have been necessary. So this would have been the first step, implementing this bidirectional sync. As the next step, like we remove the internal APIs to read from the epic, and we deprecate the GraphQL APIs. These are public APIs, but we have fortunately a 6-month policy to deprecate them. So this also gets rid of code we would have needed to change and read from the work item, and we can remove. So at some point, only the public GraphQL API and internal API read and write to the work item. It gets synced in the background. And only the public REST API would, for example, write to the epic or read from the epic right now. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that moving the APIs and deprecating them is going to be very risky. You can't imagine how many customers actually use these APIs because they extract all this data out and they put it into all sorts of systems like Power BI and things like that. And so, there's a lot of like reliance on these public APIs that extract from epics and issues and stuff. And deprecating any of these is going to be a tough challenge.
Exactly. Deprecating the GraphQL API will be a bit easier because not that many customers use that, but most of them use the REST API. So this is also like we will never get rid of this API likely because we're currently at version 4. I'm not sure if we ever will make a version 5 at some point to remove this endpoint. So yeah, logically we'll just keep this API around, but at some point we rewrite this REST API. And this is then the beauty of this bidirectional sync. We never have had to change anything here because it can just read from the new work item. And at some point, we just need to change the code in the REST API. And this is also not that hard. Like we have the scrape REST endpoint, like the scrape framework, and we just change the presenter and the serializer to read from the work item. We can do this per attribute or per association even, and step by step build up the thing to read and write to the work item. It gets synced in the background anyway. And at some point, we will only read and write to the work item and sync back to the epic. And at this point, it actually makes sense to remove the epic code. So we would get rid of most of the epic and syncing code and store only the issue ID. So we know which legacy epic belongs to which work item, and step by step remove this. So this was the whole idea of the hybrid sync. And yeah, it was a bit more like easy for us to determine.
Do you sync all objects or do you only sync the work item and root epic? Like, do you sync all the child objects as well, which are related?
The chart, I mean, if it's an epic, yes. Or how do you mean
Yeah, so
that?
epic issues or any of these, so those also get synced. So everything every related entity to epic gets synced
Yes,
to a corresponding.
exactly. Every related epic entity gets synced. I think I had this somewhere here. Like, for example, epic issues, as I said, is the table for storing this hierarchy, like for epic issues on the epic side, and for the work item side, like it's this work item parent links. So we now have these two tables that need to be in sync. Yeah.
Okay, and then is this done synchronously or asynchronously, the sync?
synchronously. It needs to be a transaction. We need to be ensured that this is the same data afterwards.
Okay. And so there's some latency impact then, right? Because you're creating two records where there's
Yes,
one.
definitely. There is this was the approach. We do more writes than we do change reads now. Like this was the trade-off that we made. The trade-off was in the end data consistency, not even, but also the amount of work we have to do. Plus, we can go back. Like if everything goes wrong when we roll this out, we can go back because the data is still there. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And then there's one part where we didn't sync, and that's why it's called hybrid. Nodes is a table that is quite large. We didn't want to duplicate the data there. And what we did is every time you now go to an epic or a work item, we check the related epic or work item, depending, and read all the nodes from them. So I will just go to the plan stage now because this is where work items are already enabled. Maybe we have some comments somewhere. Here we have comments, and I will actually, this is already rendering work items for me. So when you go to the nodes here, these are the nodes that we query from the legacy epic and from the work item. When you're on the work item side, we write the node with the association of the work item. And if you're on the legacy epic side, we write the node with the association to the legacy epic. And then we do a union query to make like sure, hey, give me all the nodes on both sides. And at some point, we will only write from the work item side and migrate all the associations. So yeah, now we have this hybrid syncing in place. We read from both sides. And the next step is to remove legacy services, like clean up all the mess we did actually. Because now this is the problem now with this approach. We need to clean up a lot of stuff now. But the thing is, every time we clean up something, and this was one of the things. So there was one more idea that we had in mind. Think about this one. So if you go to the epics page here, we find, for example, right now read from the legacy epic table. But this isn't sync, so it's fine. Now, of course, product wants us to build more features. And here comes the idea. When we build a new feature with the listing of the epic side, we will move it to the work item side. And once we do this, we no longer need this endpoint. So every time we move a feature which product always wants to the work item side, we get rid of legacy code. So this is a bit of the beauty of this approach, that we get our cleanup a bit for free with feature work. And that's where we are right now. Actually, this is our next step that we're working on to remove the legacy services, but it doesn't block us from rollout. So where we are today, actually, this is a really good timing of the meeting. Just yesterday, we fixed the last mismatch for dates, which was a bit more complex and can go into details, or actually Casio when he's here. And today or tomorrow, this fix will be merged, and next week or this week, we want to roll it out for internal team members, and next week we want to enable for team members on GitLab org the work item experience. So very likely next week, when you go to any epic, like we have it here on our testing group, the work item view will be rendered. You see, like suddenly it's here instead of on the other side. And if you are you want the old view, you can force it right now. So this reads them from the legacy side. This is one thing we implemented for us for testing, so we can always switch and see the changes. Like this is actually reading all from legacy side, and this is all reading from the work item side. And yeah, it keeps everything in sync. If you just like there's a parameter you can use to force the old view. Good. This was now 20 minutes of Nicholas talking. Thank you all for listening. And Eugenia and Cassie are here also to answer any questions. They did a significant amount of work for all of this. So thank you. Do you have any questions?
Why didn't we go with the approach of just creating a separate work items type and feature flagging it and having a view that applying a hybrid approach at the service level, I suppose, which pulls from one or the other. Because all this migration bit seems quite complicated, right? I'm sure no one wanted to do it. And so, wasn't there like a different approach you considered around just
What would
uh,
be the different approach?
so I was thinking that you just deprecate all the issues and
Yeah,
move to work items and say, hey, create work items,
yeah,
and maybe you create a view where you can perhaps query across old issues or have a button that says migrate this or something like that, right? And so some sort of thing like that. But of course, the customers need that onus, right, of migrating. This is much more harder
yeah.
to do.
That's the problem. Like if you would just say, hey, there's a new work item thing, it's with the work item type epic, copy over the data. We even provide you some script for that. I just don't think it's a good customer experience. It was one approach that was discussed, I think, but we wanted users to not see any difference and still keep using the APIs and everything. So I think it would have caused confusion when you have a legacy epic and then a new work item epic in the UI. Would be the first thing. And but yeah, this would have not cost us that much time. Yeah, absolutely. Could have been
Um,
shipped in 1 month.
Yeah, I mean, some SaaS companies do that. I'm glad you've taken this other approach, which is much more complicated and obviously took a long time. But some SaaS companies actually adopt the earlier approach of, just saying, "Hey, customers, you migrate, or you click this. We'll give you a button to migrate and stuff." But the onus then lies on the customers. Um, but this approach is much more customer friendly. Clearly, right? We're doing all the hard work for them of building these migrations. Um, and so what timeline do we have of like actually getting rid of the legacy code once this is done?
Eugenia, do you want to share? You are working on this, you're the DI.
We actually we plan to keep what we call a skinny record for the epic that would have the ID and the IID that would stay indefinitely. So it would be all around it. The reason for it is to keep support for the legacy epic, the REST API. So that relies a lot on the IID and so we always need an extra record for this. So, but the plan is that over the next 6 months to focus on updating the APIs and slowly remove the code that is not in use anymore. And then, like Nicolas said, feature by feature, every time we're gonna keep dedicating time to continue the cleanup. But at the point we are now, the first focus is performance. Anything that was affected, we're gonna focus on fixing that, getting rid of the union, this part that we have to read from both sides. That would be removed once we start writing to only the work item. So that's coming as well. But all of this was not blocking for the release, so we're treating it as after migration work. But yeah, I think it will be between 6 months and 1 year that we'll still probably be working on this.
That makes sense. And then what is the volume of records that you actually migrated, if that's
450,000, or was it 600?
It's around 500,000, like 400 something
Yes.
thousand for epic records. This was the smaller part, and associations like Epic Links has a few millions. Yeah. And I'm very like there was one idea that merge requests also become a work item, or like I think vulnerabilities. And we do a similar migration. And I think with that amount of volume, it would not work that well, to be honest. Like it was only possible because the volume is not that large. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, the volume is, sub million is not that bad. Um, yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. If not, then thank you, Nicholas. This is truly a great session. I'm sure lots of people are going to watch this asynchronously, and I'm sure they'll contact you with questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eugenia and Cassio as well for joining and assisting here. And so thank you, everyone. And we'll have the next knowledge sharing session, I believe, next week. I'll send out an invite when that's set up. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for setting this up.